Hello and welcome to another week of the LA Times College Football Roundtable. I am your host, Ryan Kartje, our USC beat writer, joined as always by Ben Bolch, UCLA beat writer. We're in the same press box this weekend. USC beats UCLA 19-13 and what can only be described as a slog of a game, I think, until those last minutes. Ben, what was your first initial takeaway from this year's edition?
It was kind of two pretty mediocre teams kind of going head to head there, and USC made enough plays in the end. I think from the UCLA perspective, a couple of the head scratching things for me was, uh, they TJ Harden had a lot of success early in this game running the ball. I believe he had I want to say 80, something like 82 yards at the end of the first quarter or something like that, or 79, and they kind of went away from him. And I thought it was going to be another big showing like he had in the Iowa game, and then we didn't really see that. So I thought that was curious. And then on the, third and one play before the big fourth down, they went with Keegan Jones, which a lot of people are unhappy with. He's kind of a smaller, more of kind of like a scat back kind of guy, and he got stuffed. And then on fourth down on the sneak, Ethan Garbers obviously got stuffed with what fans are very unhappy about with some non-creative play calling there. So, some obvious second guessing. Of course, you can do that in any game, but clearly UCLA did not make the plays it needed to. What was also really weird was Ethan Garbers completing his first 11 passes of the second half and then going 0 for 4 on a drive that could have been a game-winning drive for UCLA. So, Deshaun Foster keeps channeling John Wooden saying that, we haven't been at our best when our best is needed. And there's no disputing that was the case in this rivalry game.
Both teams tried to squander as many opportunities as possible through the first couple quarters. I know with USC, they had the ball inside the 5 yard line three different times in the first half. Only managed 9 points, three field goals out of that, and some really uninspired play calling, I thought, from Lincoln Riley down there. Now, it's hard to always sift through what's execution, what's play calling, but you only see Woody Marks get the ball one time in those three drives inside the 5 yard line. That's all play calling. I don't understand that. And the other pass plays, Jaden Mayava just throws. I think he had three of four were goal line fades. You know, that's just not gonna work, especially with a quarterback where I don't know that precision is going to be Jaden Mayava's strong suit, and you don't need it to be. Certainly there were times in this game where I thought he was a little off kilter, and I thought UCLA's defense did a pretty good job with him. But ultimately, I will give Lincoln Riley his flowers in that there was a play call in the fourth quarter that really changes the game, I think, down the stretch. UCLA has a terrible shanked punt that gives USC great field position, and Lincoln Riley dials up a double pass in which Jay Mayava throws a lateral to Makai Lemon, who then throws it down the field to Kyron Hudson. USC scores on the next play, but even that next play, the margin was thin. I mean, throughout this game, there were moments where I thought either of this team could have really taken advantage, and let's say Jaden Mayava gets sacked on that next play, which he very nearly did. He just barely escapes two tackles and then throws a touchdown. But if he gets sacked on that play, this game is completely different. We don't know what happens next. So I thought both of these teams had a lot of chances, and ultimately it was USC who finally took advantage at the end, something that they haven't done pretty much all season until now.
Yeah, and that gives a perfect segue into my wardrobe that I put especially on today, which I will pan to now. Punting is winning because it certainly was in this game. USC got excellent punting, and UCLA, which has gotten excellent punting from Brody Richter 90+% of the season, got that terrible shank punt, which was pivotal in this game. So, it's another reminder that the game does have three phases: offense, defense, special teams. I know special teams often doesn't get its due, but it was huge in this game and contributed to the big USC win.
Yeah, Eddie Chaplitsky, USC's punter, has basically been the team MVP all season long, and had another just excellent game. Feeling himself, has a heat check after the game, says he's the best punter in America,
I
which
like it. I actually
I
like it.
love. More confident punters. That's what we need in college football. Well, Ben, I wonder, both of these teams have very different expectations, I think, coming into the season. And I wonder after this game, obviously UCLA is knocked out of bowl eligibility. USC clinches bowl eligibility. What does that mean differently to both teams? For UCLA,
Yeah. I
is it a
mean,
huge disappointment?
I don't know that it's a huge disappointment, but I think, if you get to 5 or 6 wins in a first season that includes a victory over USC, I think that is clearly a success. Whereas now it feels like there's going to be a little bit more spend needed. And they're going to have to avoid a letdown against Fresno State on Saturday, which is no easy task. UCLA has traditionally had some of these letdowns, particularly against Cal at home, including last year. So, they're going to be on letdown alert, but I was very proud of myself, Ryan. I found what I thought was the coolest little stat nugget that maybe I've ever unearthed. Fresno State is won the last 4 games against UCLA. 3 of those wins came against UCLA coaches in their first season. Chip Kelly in 2021, Rick Neuheisel in 2008, and Carl Durrell in 2003. I mean, that's kind of uncanny, right? That they don't play each other all that often, yet 3 of the 4 wins in this streak were against UCLA coaches in their first season. So Deshaun Foster needs to break that trend on Saturday at the Rose Bowl, because if they lose this game, I think it does kind of sour some of the momentum they had there with that 3 game winning streak, pretty recently before the last 2 weeks. So they need something to really kind of go into the offseason with some momentum, get those NIL dollars going. And, that's going to be critical because they're going to be losing a lot of talent. They need a lot of new bodies into this roster, and they're going to need the money to do it. So this is actually I would say a pretty big game on Saturday for the Bruins.
Why do they keep scheduling Fresno State? I mean, I feel like the universe is telling them not to.
Yeah, and you're right, because even Chip Kelly's, one of his biggest wins against LSU in 2021. Well, the next week they played Fresno State and lost. So the universe is definitely telling UCLA, let's not schedule Fresno State anymore, because these guys are tough. They want this game more than you can imagine. It means a lot, in the San Joaquin Valley. So yeah, it's going to be. I think it's a coin flip game, man. And Fresno State's coming off a big win over Colorado State, which is a good team. So they're clearly a competent team. I believe they're 6-5. So it's going to be interesting. But I will say, UCLA, if they've done one thing all season, it's they have been resilient. They haven't given up. They were 1-5, and people thought, oh my God, are they going to win another game this year? And they got it to a point where with a win Saturday at the Rose Bowl, Deshaun Foster can say, hey, we did enough in our first year. Join us in this quest, and let's keep building.
Yeah, it feels like something where you don't walk away totally disappointed, but I don't know that I would look at the Deshaun Foster era and think, the trajectory is completely upward at this point. I don't know that he did any convincing that he's a great coach in this first season, but, certainly, they're not doomed, I guess, if that's the optimistic look at it. But with USC, it's a little bit more complicated, I think. Obviously winning this game was a big deal. Making bowl eligibility is important. I think missing a bowl this season would have been a huge disaster. And at least at this point, you can technically reach the same point that you were at last year. 8-5, nothing to write home about, certainly, but not a huge disaster. Before the season, I thought this team would win 8 games anyway. So not too far away from that, but I think it's going to be a long shot that they, are able to really even compete with Notre Dame. I mean, this team has really just kind of blown teams out since losing to Northern Illinois early on in the season. And now that USC does have bowl eligibility, and I know Lincoln Riley has talked about the importance of finishing in this last sort of 3-game season, they've won 2 of those games. I just don't know that the motivation is going to be there relative to what Notre Dame's motivation is, which is we need to win this game to make the college football playoff, point blank. There's a lot more for the Irish to play for in this game with a much better team. So I think it's going to be difficult for USC to win in this one. But I do think, now that it's looking like, LA Bowl, Sun Bowl, Vegas Bowl, that stretch, depending on what happens next week. I think it's important that USC uses this time to figure out some of the problems that they had all throughout this season. Figure out if Jaden Mayava is the guy at quarterback going forward. Develop some of the defensive players. But as we learned last year, the Holiday Bowl, everyone was so excited coming out of that game. 6 touchdowns from Miller Moss. Suddenly, it looks like the offense will continue what it did under Caleb Williams. None of that momentum transfers over to the next season.
Oh.
It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, I was going to say, that is my big question with USC right now. Is Jaden Mayava the guy? And UCLA is kind of in a little bit of a similar spot because obviously Ethan Garbers is leaving. So they have a decision to make. Justin Martin, who looked very promising in a loss to Penn State, is he the guy that you have enough confidence in to anoint him the starter and maybe bring in some quarterback depth in the transfer portal, like a veteran who's kind of like a change of pace guy, maybe somebody to run the Wildcat, or do you want to go for broke and bring in, spend $1 million on a high-end guy, maybe somebody from a smaller program with another season or two of eligibility left, anoint him the guy, and then, Justin obviously puts him in kind of a bind. But that's the big question for me for UCLA. And also, I think Kartje Malloy has earned himself a raise. Now, the big question, the defensive coordinator at UCLA, big question is, will it come from UCLA or will he be lured away in similar fashion? Dan Lynn, who, doubled his salary by going across town. But I think Kartje Malloy has done a good enough job that he will be a coveted commodity at the end of the season.
I can't believe it's been this long since it took us this long to bring up Dan Lynn's name. Obviously, the defense for USC, really showed out in this game. I think, we talk about how ugly things were. That I don't know if we're giving enough credit to how good USC's defense was in this game. Really came up with stops at the right times. And that's a huge credit to Dan Lynn this season. I think if you come out of this season feeling positive about anything with USC, it's that they have a, very competent, if not elite defensive staff that I think once you actually have the right players in place, a competent pass rush, especially, I think we're going to see this USC defense take off probably sooner rather than later. But Ben, we have just a couple minutes left. I want to give you a chance to talk about women's basketball. UCLA with a huge win over #1 South Carolina.
Yeah.
Keep it short. Let's hear about it.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like we should have flipped this and talked mostly about women's basketball and sprinkled in football at the end. I think, the two programs are doing that well. Obviously, the Trojans had a tough home loss to the Fighting Irish on Saturday. I believe they dropped to 6th in the new poll that came out today. UCLA, on the other hand, is now #1. First time in school history, they're #1 in women's basketball in the AP poll. Historic win over South Carolina yesterday at Pauley Pavilion. Man, that place was rocking. It was awesome. Some of the greats were there. Ann Myers Drysdale, Marcus Johnson, probably a bunch of other people I didn't even notice were there, but they just came out and smacked the Gamecocks. They opened up a 15-2 lead. They were hitting on all cylinders. They really set the tone with defense. Lauren Betts just came over and just ripped the ball away from one of the Gamecocks players early in the game and set the tone. Kiki Rice was in passing lanes. London Jones made all 5 of her 3-pointers off the bench. Gabriela Jaquez brought her trademark toughness off the bench. And it just, the big thing wasn't just that they won a big game. It was that this is a complete team with a lot of talent, even coming off the bench. I mean, I think they really don't have a discernible weakness right now. So, the funny thing was walking out of Pauley Pavilion, I looked up where's the women's Final Four this year, because I think, between our two teams, I would bet on having at least one and maybe two of them out there. And the answer is it's in Tampa. So I don't know how you've ever been there, but Burns Steakhouse, one of my favorite spots in the whole world. They have the biggest wine list, I believe, of any restaurant. And they have, even better, they have a dessert room, which is its own kind of mini restaurant within the steakhouse, which I'd never heard or seen that concept. But if you ever get a chance to go to Tampa, Burns is the place to go. So hopefully you and me, maybe we can make a date there in early April.
I was going to say, I think that's up to Juju Watkins and company right now for me. I know USC, obviously, you mentioned it. Tough loss to Notre Dame. Hannah Hidalgo really just tore through USC's defense, which she's done with a lot of defenses so far this season. But lots still to figure out for Lindsey Gottlieb. I think there's a lot of new players. They lose Kennedy Smith. They're very talented freshmen for a while to an injury. Still a lot of questions to be solved. But I think when you have the talent that they do, Juju Watkins and Kiki Arief, especially, I think USC will figure it out here in the coming weeks. But that's going to do it. Now we have one more week left in the college football season. UCLA Fresno State Saturday afternoon, USC Notre Dame at the same time. We'll be back on Monday to bring you a recap of that, and then we will switch to basketball season probably shortly after that. Ben, I know you're excited for that one.
Yes.
Well, until next time, guys.